Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Fun Friday live podcast with Dawn Harrington, that's me, and Raphael. Just wanted to kind of go over some introductory questions. Like Raph has been doing this with a lot of the data fam leads, so I thought, why not record it and make it live? You want me to share my screen? Do you want to start?
I can start. I can start.
How about we introduce you? I'm sorry, I'm already jumping in. Raphael, introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Rafael Guevara. I work at a bank. I work at the same bank that Don works at, Chase, but I'm in a different office location. Prior to my involvement in the bank, I used to be in utilities, working at a retail electricity company, and was there for about probably 12 years. So a lot of roles, a lot of hats. I did a lot of analytics there in terms of operations with call centers. I worked on the trade floor, working with our traders and doing analytics for them. I also worked in the credit department, so looking at uh, you know deferred payment plans and payments around that, data around that. So that job primarily, I can go a little bit into this, was my first kind of foray into analytics. Prior to that, my degree's in marketing and in advertising. So prior to that, I thought I was gonna be like Don Draper, the whole suit and drinking of brandy in office hours and you know big bucks but that was just a figment of my imagination. But it wasn't really until I started this job at this utility company where I really got involved into analytics. My first crash course was like SQL and SAS and coding and learning all that. I didn't really get into visualizations probably until about 10 years ago. But since then, just been learning. But as Don mentioned, just recently, just been kind of putting myself more out there, creating content, reaching out to folks that are interested in, wanting to chat with me about their data journey, and hoping that if they have time and want an informal chat, that's kind of why I'm here today. I reached out to Don, and Don was like, "Hey, let's go ahead and record this, and kind of go back and forth with these questions I've been kind of sharing with data leaders." So that's enough about me. I know that Don has a very avid following, but I do want to, for the sake of this conversation, is have her kind of talk a little bit about how your data journey started.
So I just had this makes me feel old, but I just had an 18-year anniversary at bank as well. So my data journey, I started out in HR, so 8.5 years in HR, and that was doing like business objects, doing like SQL reporting. On the side, I would teach like Microsoft Office classes because I realized there was like kind of a need, and I would teach SQL classes on the side. So that's kind of where I started. Nothing too visual yet. Business objects is kind of like very minor because it was like such an earlier version of the tool. So it's still kind of spreadsheet driven. When I learned about Tableau, Raf, you've been doing it a lot longer than me. 2019, I kind of started, but at that point, I had already gotten into like SAS reporting and stuff like that. And like I heard about Tableau and I was like so excited because, I could see what my buddy was building. And I was just like, this is a very cool tool to kind of, marry the reporting aspect and like the visualization aspect. You could have logos inside a dashboard for like the business that you're reporting, McDonald's logo. You could have a McDonald's logo inside a dashboard if you wanted versus Burger King. And I was just like, this is so cool. Just because like I have 2 degrees. I've got a art and design bachelor's degree, and then I went back for school 10 years later to get a computer science degree. So I feel like Tableau can kind of help marry both. So visualization, I got into Alteryx first. Alteryx before the visualization tool, because I'm also an Alteryx innovator, and like data, I think is so interesting. It's like a puzzle. So you can't have data visualizations in Tableau without the data. So I feel like our data structures, data wrangling is all like a big part. of before you even get to the visualization.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think probably the most fun part for me, that I learned kind of getting into data analytics and visualizations was I come from a background where a company where I had to manage a lot of models and SAS and SQL, but like most things, they break, right? A lot of things break and errors happen as we're all used to, and so it got to the point where I just got really good at kind of investigating and understanding why it's happening, why the error is there, and so I take that back now with my dashboards and Tableau, primarily because I'm just kind of curious. When I see stuff out there on public that specifically I'm not used to seeing or didn't really think about it, then I start to dig in. And, I hope like can I download this workbook? Is it can I do that? And then I'm able to download it. I'm like, all right, great. I'll take a look at it. And that's kind of how my kind of learning, my self development started, was trying to you know steal from other people like that. The biggest form of flattery, right, is you leverage their stuff and you learn from it and you upskill and then you thank them. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. You do mention that I've been doing Tableau a lot longer, but I really haven't been active, or at least, to be perfectly honest, like making an effort to put myself out there until like the last couple of years. My first kind of entrance into Tableau was more like, hey, replicate all these legacy reports that we have in Excel and Access, and
Oh,
use Tableau
oh
to
yeah.
do it. So a lot of that was just like, okay, you know, I have a vision, replicate it, okay, on to the next one. And it wasn't really until like the last 5 years I got really involved in Tableau and like really trying to upskill myself and being able to kind of think outside the box and find ways to accomplish things that aren't really possible yet in Tableau. So that's kind of why I've kind of taken it more of a personal like driven journey of my own, just to kind of make sure that I find a niche and I try to excel at that. Another question I have for you, Don, which is kind of more out of curiosity. You're at work and also online via LinkedIn. You're very active in terms of providing tips and doing trainings, and I think that's you can have those developers that are highly skilled in their craft and know what they do, and in your profile you do that. But I also applaud those folks too that also find the need to train and to upskill and to develop people, and because it takes a very specific person to do that. That's not only confident in their know-it-all, but it's also patient. Um, and I say patience because I just recently started teaching a course, but it was like probably one of my first times actually, being an instructor, and I've always started to feel like that imposter syndrome, like, oh man, why are they
Oh
learning?
yeah.
Why are they learning from me? I don't really know that much, but I think it's helped me not only in my presentation skills, but you know, find pockets where maybe I'm still not um, confident yet, and try to reacclimate and relearn those so that you know, so that I'm ready for the next class. To your point in training, when did you finally realize that it started to click for you? Like, this is fun, it's making sense, and now I'm seeing the results. I'm seeing folks that I've trained, and now they're off in their own journey as well, doing what they do.
Um, I started teaching Alteryx before I started teaching Tableau, and I just remember the first time I did it, it was like crickets. There wasn't that much interaction. So I was like, oh no, like what did I do? Because I came across as like a know-it-all, and like I had a really good friend attend the class, and it was like you go really fast. So I think it's just
Mm.
something you kind of hone and get better at with time. Um, and I'm kind of having that confidence thing now in a new role. Like, I don't know the data yet. You know what I mean? So it's like you only get better with time, and you can be more confident in your own skills. But with teaching, I think you can be kind of self deprecating.
Yeah.
You can kind of say, look, I am not the expert here. And like you'll find that people are more reactive if you're personable.
Right.
So, like, I'll make mistakes live, or like having a sense of humor helps. You know what I mean? Like with classes, and It's just have that good buddy come across as like, you make a mistake live or tell them about a time that you made a mistake and say, hey, learn from my mistake,
Right.
So that's kind of how I approach training and kind of how I approach a lot of things. Like you and I were talking right before the session about a buddy of mine that has like a different approach to training. Like he plans. And I'm more of a like, because you and I have talked about liking comedians and liking kind of like that. It's not ad hoc. I'm trying to come up with like, my brain's not working today. The term for like when you're like on the spot, like coming up with quips.
Like riffing.
Yeah. Like you got to be open, not rehearsed, so
it's like those comedians that know how to work a crowd, right? And then you have those that are really kind of regiment. They have their own kind of set list of jokes, but then you have those that just kind of go off the riff, like a Chappelle or something that knows how to work the crowd and is there for like 4 hours, right, talking to people. Yeah, I totally understand that. I'm not there yet. I'm not.
Neither am I. Comedy wise, but like when you're teaching, it's like you can be more focused because you're actually delivering something specific, and it's not too like off the cuff out there, like on the spot, like comedians do. But it's still, you can kind of keep it, kind of free flowing. Like I have this, but not everything's planned to like the minutia of like every minute. So. And it's always going to change because somebody's going to ask you a question that might derail and you got to bring it back in. But those are the interesting things that happen. When someone asks you a question and they're engaged and you're like, thank you for the question.
I have another detailed question on training and in classes. What type of, I'll use Tableau as an example, or even Alteryx, since I know that too. What type of features do you find, I guess, are you interested or do you like enjoy teaching? You know what I mean? Like I'll say for me, like I can go through all the different versions and all of like the growth and proliferation of the application of Tableau. But then when we start talking about dashboard actions and dynamic zone visibility, I'm like, that geeks me out because I use that a lot. So I could tell like when I'm, sharing that with a class, like I'm a lot more easier to talk about it. And so what are some features in your head that, when you have that in your class, like, all right, I know this, I love it, and I can talk about it for hours?
I stress more on use case, like some of the problems that daily users have, like, I have this file in this file folder that's dropped off every month, like how can I automatically pull it in at once, or how can I drill down into the data? Like that's the part that I really like sharing with Tableau, is that you can use it as an ad hoc analysis to answer on the fly questions, because we all know you get on the fly questions.
Yeah.
So like just showing them how quickly you do like a scatter plot. See my outliers. Okay, let me drill down into this data and see what, purchase is costing the company so much in negative profit. So that's what I like, is kind of like helping them to get to the aha moment of like, this is a use case that you very well may have, so that's how I like teaching. I don't really like featuring so much on like the new like dynamic zone visibility. I talk more about like dashboards and like use cases. Like, so that's kind of like how I teach. I focus on like, let me try to make this more relatable to you in your job. So
let me, so another question for you. I think what I really enjoyed about Tableau when I first got introduced to it was I went to my first conference, and I had been to conferences before for other applications. Like I've been to a SaaS conference, and that seemed pretty regimental and pretty kind of strict. And but then I went to my first Tableau conference, and I was like, wow, it's different. It's just it was something that I wasn't used to. Like it was a little bit more of an alternative vibe. Like I kind of got like a grunge feel. Like this isn't like a strict jazz or strict classical music. It was like alternative or grunge, and it was more my wheelhouse. So that's what I really enjoyed about that before I even got involved in the community, was that it was just different and it catered to a different kind of person. What were your feelings with Tableau when you first kind of learned about not only the application, but just in terms of like what it was known as, or when maybe your experience when you went to your first conference?
So Kyle Massey, and is the data dev ambassador and I were like newbies. We were both on the same team, and we were both bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at our very first Tableau conference together. So we were both really excited and didn't know what to expect. Like, we had heard about the cool factors about like how it's just, there's so many people and it's so welcoming, and we were kind of a little like, you got Tableau ambassadors are kind of like the famous people, so it can be kind of intimidating the first time. We're just like, hello, like you're fangirling or fanguying out,
Yep.
like, hey, how's it going? So that's really what interests me about Tableau, is that the community is just so welcoming, and like you feel like you're kind of like you found your niche, I would say. So our first one, I was gonna say last year was my third one. I haven't even like, it was just like the last like 3 years was like 2023, 2024, and 2025. Like that was my very first one. I had gone to an Alteryx Inspire the prior year, which is kind of a little different because it's like more data driven, like it, and it's more solution for it doesn't have a visual factor. So yeah, I thought it was like really cool, and I got a buddy to partner with me. We like shared a hotel room, and it's cool when you get to like enjoy it with other friends, and you can see them like geek out like you, like, oh hey, how's it going? So
In terms of like, let's think about your growth, right? If you can think back, looking on, when you first learned Tableau as an application, and where you're at now. I know one of the things for me in my own on my own perspective is I remember like some of the dashboards I put out there on my profile. I still have them up there.
I have them up there too. I've got a UFO one out there that I just look at and I'm like, oh, but it shows you where you came from.
And I think the thing that resonates with me is I can think back like 6 years when I had my first profile account, and then I look at some of those dashboards. I'm like, wow, like I remember this one, and I was really proud of it. At that time, I was like, I'm putting this one out there, and it's funny because you think about your growth and you look back at that now, and you're like, wow, like I've come a long way, and that's good, and and I'm at the point now where I'm starting to learn different things, whether it's design or working with white space, and those are some of the things that are new ventures in my journey in terms of dashboarding. So, when you look back at your stuff, what are some of the things what are some of the thoughts that come to your head in terms of not only your growth as a developer or creator or just as a person?
And sometimes you don't, because I was gonna say you don't realize how far you've come until you see like that visual reminder of like, oh yeah, I could have did a no highlighting action and gotten rid of some of that like highlighting that's going on there, or wow, this is like a blur of green that I'm seeing on the screen because it's got way too much. I should have did a keep the values when I zoom out of it. But just like you nitpick and you think about things that are better. One of the things that I started with new users was doing an event called Dashboard Revisited, which I have also asked you if you'd be interested in doing that, where it's like taking an existing dashboard and like just revamping it. And I really liked the last one because we had 2 users do one together, so you saw 2 different perspectives.
Oh, cool.
And that is just like such a creative way of like, hey, like how could you redo this? And that's the beauty of Tableau, is that you can have many different ways of approaching the same problem. And if you look at like Viz of the Day or like Tableau Public, it's you can see that. You can see the many different dashboards and the many different ways that people approach problems. So looking at past work that I've done, I could have done this, I could have done that, but like I'm just gonna keep moving on to like a new subject, a new, you know what I mean? It's always good to know, like, to see where you started, where you are now.
Right. And in terms of how you started with the community, or as most folks know it as the data fam, one of the things I like about the community is I think it's all centered around collaboration. Whether it's sharing your dashboards or seeing those leaders that have kind of ventured out from their own kind of shell into becoming like yourself, like a trainer or a content creator, consultant, or a dashboard mentor of some sort. So when is it that you first got involved in the data fam, and what did you like about it, and what were some of the things that inspired you at that time?
So I started my blog in 2020 because I was sending out tech tips internally for years in Microsoft Office, Alteryx, and then Tableau. So I was like, you know what? I should do this for myself. I should do this on my own blog site and then share them because it's really what I'm doing outside of work anyway. So, building a name for myself, Data Fam, and sharing them with other users. And Sarah Bartlett was actually the one that kind of helped me out there because she had put in a post that, I was a newcomer and that she really liked the blog. And that just was like, I was like so shocked that someone would call out like my tech tips and that they would start to gain traction. So that's kind of where I started, was like 2000, late 2019 or 2020. It's like when I started getting traction in like the data fam community with the tech tips, because it's like always trying to come up with something. I would do them regularly, like weekly, and now I just don't have the time because I'm I'm doing all these other things. So it all started with the blog site and then went on from there.
I think for me, what was kind of, because I never really thought that I would like build some kind of presence online or share stuff. I thought it would just stick to just a public profile and that was it. But one of the things that really kind of like inspired me was at my current job where I'm at. I credit my public profiles, as one of the major reasons of how I got this job and doing what I do. I rarely I put stuff like I'm put a link on my resume in terms of go check this out, but I put my public profile on that resume, and then my hiring manager at that time said, "Hey, I took a look at your profile. I like what I see," and she specifically said, "I like the growth," because she could see that the dashboards that were dated and whatnot, and she says they're getting a lot cleaner. I like what I see, and then she's like, I want to. She wasn't supposed to do this, but she's like, I got some sample data, and let's see what you could do with it. And so I turned it around for her, and she was, happy with that at that moment. Thank God. And then, but it wasn't because it was because of that I really thought, wow, like this made a difference. This online portal or community made a difference for me. What can I do to at least give back to that? So that's kind of one of the main reasons that it's driven me to kind of create some type of blog or content creation. I'm still in the baby steps, the baby stages, but that's something that I think kind of drives me is the not knowing aspect of it, right? Like, you put something out there and like, no one's going to take a look at this. And then randomly you check out the analytics on your website. Oh, people are taking a look at it. That's pretty cool. Or I'll get some likes, or whatnot, little things like that. Those are little wins for me, and it keeps me motivated. It keeps me going.
Every now and then I'll go back to my blog site and it just blows my mind about how many people have like looked at some of them. Like some of the office tips that I posted, which I haven't touched since 2020, have had like thousands of views. And I'm just like, what, really? Like, oh, okay. So yeah, it's always cool. I remember wanting to get a visit the day in the worst way. I never have, which is fine. But the Data Fam Roundup like started featuring some of my stuff. So I would do the hashtag Data Fam, and like that was really kind of like a humbling, like, oh wow, you can, and that was like, oh okay, so that's kind of where I started. But yeah. I forgot where I was going. I'm so sorry. Oh
no, it's fine.
So the way that I always like being involved in certain things. So like I've met some people. I've always kind of been outgoing, like at work, and so I'll get involved in things like being a photographer for on campus for Employee Appreciation Week. I don't know how. If you ask me how I got involved in all these things, I have no idea. They just kind of happen because I just randomly talk to whoever, and even like I've introduced people to other people, and maybe they would remember like when I started. Because my one friend Bill, he's like, I didn't talk the first couple of times like I met you, you just came over and were like, "Do you like video games? I like video games." Blah 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 blah. So I think that's kind of how all of it kind of happens, like getting involved in Data Plus Women stuff. You know, my good friend Steve Adams was like having me take a look at supermom.org. You know, that could be something. External Tableau user groups, just like, you know, you probably get involved in external Tableau user groups too.
Yeah.
You
know? And on that respect, you know, you mentioned Data Plus Women or any other kind of tugs that you look out for, that just to either be a participant or help out in.
There is a Florida Tableau user group with a good friend Yamil Medina, who's a Tableau ambassador. He has reached out to me a couple times. That one was fun. There is a veterans Tableau user group that I did a couple of things for. There's also Alteryx user groups. So occasionally like those come up too. And I don't have kids, so this is what I do for fun. So I think that's kind of also what happens, is that, you know, like, hey, what can I do? What can I be involved in? And I come from a family that's like that too. Like my dad's always involved in something, you know, extra. And like my grandfather would volunteer at the firehouse for like all the firehouse things. And it's just like, I think we're just a family of just, you know, going out there and volunteering our time. So
I think one of the best things for me, and I'm going to shift gears a bit and talk a little bit about leadership.
Sure.
I guess just being kind of exposed to the community, right? You know, just being active and then listening to people's posts, or you know, checking out their blogs. I think that's kind of helped me in terms of reshaping how I approach data, or I approach problems or use cases. And in a sense, I think it's kind of helped me in becoming a leader, not just I guess not just in the data fan, but just within my own respective teams and groups, right? You know, just trying to find a way to stick out and use that kind of knowledge and development of skills to share with others. In terms of leadership, how has, you know, either your exposure to Alteryx or Tableau, or just being involved in the data community, how has that helped shape how you approach problems or data or projects or things like that?
I get approached a lot about random, just like I reach out to people randomly. They also reach out to me randomly with like questions. And so I think you serve as like a leader and like a example just by being the one that is able to help them with their issue and come up with a solution for their problem. And also all of the events, like being the leader for the events is also like, hey, this is I'm the spokesperson for like the internal lab Tableau user group. So it's like you don't realize like your name gets more popular in the community, and the amount of people that you're you know, helping and serving as a leader by example through those kinds of instances. So Stack Overflow is like a great site to kind of give you a numerical value of like your impact. I used to do articles in that. And if you go to your profile, it'll tell you like you have impacted like 300 and some odd users. So it's like, oh, okay. You know, because like Tableau Public, you can see the favorites. You can see how many people have viewed your Tableau Public dashboard. But it's just kind of interesting. Like that's one dashboard, then you have many, and it's like, well, are these the same people? Are they different people? Like that's always the question. We could dive into the data to find out. So yeah, not like leading a team per se, because I'm brand new in that aspect. Sure. But being a community leader,
you definitely don't need a team to be a leader. I mean, you definitely have shown that. On the same respects of leadership, I think from my perspective, I think the community's helped me understand that, and I'm very hard on myself, and then you know this about me. Like I think what's shaped me was coming to the realization that I'm not. There's way more people out there in the data fam that, you know, are well progressed in whatever it is I want to learn. But, you know, I can hate about it, or I can join and say, you know what, these are some leaders and I want to learn from you and I want to absorb what it is that you have to offer. So I think that's kind of one of the things that has morphed in terms of, you know, me being a leader, was really understanding that I'm always gonna have to learn. There's always stuff to learn. I'm never gonna be an expert, but that's the fun thing I think about it is, there's always something new to learn. There's always someone new to learn from. And I'll give you a really quick example. So as you mentioned, I've been kind of reaching out to folks in the data fam, and one of the folks that I reached out to, her name was Maria Londono, and so I was talking to her specifically because she had put a lot of good dashboards and work out there on her profile, and I thought they were really cool and aesthetically, really well put together and good design. So she kind of put me on the spot. She's like, "Hey, let's take a look at some of your stuff." I'm like, "Oh wow, okay, yeah, let's go for it." And immediately she looked at one and she's like, "Hey, do you mind feedback?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about it." And she was able to provide me a quick crash course on how to make something better. And I explained to her I was finding limitations in doing this aspect of it, and she kind of took it offline for me, and she kind of figured it out for me. And I think that's just a good testament to the community, just how we're willing to all help each other. And as long as we want to be able to, as long as we have a goal in mind and we share that goal, I think there's people that are readily available to help you get to that goal. And I think that's what has helped me, because if I was in that situation with Maria, like maybe 8 years ago, I don't think I would have been as, emotionally intelligent or humble enough to say, "Yeah, I don't think I want you to look at my stuff." But, but now it's just like, it's always going to be an opportunity to get better. And I think that's helped strengthen my partnership with her in the network, but also, being able to understand that if I have a question to reach out to, that's someone I can reach out to because she's done it before. So, who are some folks in the community in your perspective that either, you can reach out to, or if you have questions on? I know you mentioned Steve, and, he's been someone that you've partnered with at the Tableau conference, and you're doing something with him now. If you can speak more to that.
Someone else that you've also Chris, I'm drawing a blank at his last name. It's funny because the more people the more repetitive names. So I remember one time I had 3 Alexes in my teams, and I was like, "Wait, I accidentally pinged the one, and I meant to ping the first one, and I was like, I know too many people. This is the downside of knowing too many people." But Chris, and why am I drawing a blank at his name?
Williams?
Yes, Chris Williams. Oh, I feel so embarrassed because he's a good buddy of mine. I met him at Alteryx Inspire.
Oh, okay.
And then I saw him at the first Tableau conference I went to in 2023, and I was like, "Hi, Chris." And he probably didn't have a choice to become my friend. I kind of was like, "We're friends now. You're awesome," So he was somebody I admire too, because he's just so intelligent and but he's so chill. He comes across as such a chill person, easy to talk to. And he was just probably just kind of "Who is this person?" No, he remembered me. But I was just like, "Hey, let's do a session together," So yeah. So Chris Williams, Yamil Medina. There is Ant Pulley. I for some reason kept running into him over and over and over again in 2024 Tableau conference, and I was like, "Are we thinking did you not invite? I mean, did you invite me and I didn't know?" All these sessions. So there's a lot of ambassadors that are just so easygoing and approachable. So there's like I said, Sarah Bartlett is somebody that's also approachable. Lindsay Betzendahl is another one who's in my same town. I didn't even know. I was like, "I live in Westchester," and she was like, "What? I live in Westchester." It's just funny. There's a lot of names. Kyle Massey, super intelligent. I think I started being an admirer of Zach Geis. Some of the stuff that he was doing, because he's also a data dev ambassador, and any of the data dev ambassadors, you just wow, what they can do is just so amazing. It was kind of intimidating at first. "You seem so smart. Can you help me?"
Yeah.
But they are approachable, so they will help you out. So
you mentioned your interaction seeing Chris at the conference, and I thought the last couple of times I've been at a conference, I think it was fun to see everybody, but I think what was kind of a double-edged sword was, you're not going to be able to meet everyone you want
Oh yeah.
in those 3 days. So I think that's kind of what started this like interest of just reaching out to people and having these conversations. And that's the one thing I will say I guess I'm giving my flowers to the community, is that everybody's approachable, everybody's accessible, and there's a really high response rate that I've been getting. And in terms of people that have been in jobs like in sales and that can cold call, like even having a response rate like in the high 50s or 60s is something to admire, in those type of fields. So, and I think that's one thing that I really enjoyed, is that people are willing to chat, people are willing to talk about, themselves and their journey, but also if they can't, they're also just willing to just respond back and say, hey, I'm totally busy, but reach out to me in the next couple of months, and we'll take it from there. So I think that's been one of the biggest things I've learned about the community, is just willingness just to be accessible and to be available. In your point of view, let's talk a little bit now in terms of, what are some functionalities within the application at Tableau that you really enjoy? And this is more so not just training, but in either your line of work or what you currently do outside of work when you're using the application. What do you like, using or doing?
I would say, the dynamic zone visibility that you talked about before, because it was like old school. We had to do sheet swapping. We had to do some parameter and fun things to get the sheet swapping to go on. But I remember when I first started, the whole dashboard actions thing was like, how, like thinking it through to like the next level, like was for me, I was just like, that was my blocker. But I do love the dashboard actions and what you can do with just the UI functionality of like of Tableau. I know everybody's like talk about AI, but like with 2023 and onwards, they started having like the data guide, which was very helpful. They had data stories and they got rid of data stories, but like helping people understand what they're seeing. Because I think all beginner developers get that moment where like they've met with a stakeholder and the stakeholder's like, what am I looking at? And you're like, oh no, like what have I done to not describe? Or so like I like those tools to kind of help give you a next level analysis, like take the visualization and talk about like what's going on, even with the caption feature, like worksheet show captions to kind of help the whole development analysis. Like I like that feature. I like the fact that someone can drill in to the data and know what they're looking at and not have to ask the developer, what am I looking at?
Right. Yeah. So when DZV launched, like I was like, what? I don't have to hide titles anymore. I don't have to work with text boxes on the sheet swaps.
Yeah.
Like this is really cool. And so that's one thing that I really enjoyed about that, is just kind of, making our jobs just a little bit easier, in terms of, how we create and how we develop. You mentioned stakeholders and how you interact with stakeholders. A question on that is, and I think it's something that I've been, struggling with for a while, and I've gotten better at it, just to have those tough conversations. But I remember thinking back to when I'm talking to stakeholders in my past jobs, and the question was always, well, can I just download the data, or where do I go to download the raw data? And it was more of trying to find a way to get them to buy in and, work together to create something that they can immediately see, at the onset, rather than just going to the underlying data. Can you, I guess, briefly describe a little bit of those interactions you've had in terms of, whether it's that use case that I'm talking about, or just in terms of, creating that partnership and talking about expectations in a pre-build phase?
So requirements documents help. I chat GPT'd like all of the questions that you could ask, because you need to know, what are you building this for? What is this solution for? And then the storytelling piece for stakeholders is like letting them show, yeah, I could just get you this table, but don't you want your users, or don't you want to get to your answer faster? So there's ways of doing that. So instead of having like a text table, let me get you an insights table and show you how, like, oh, do you see, like I usually start with a highlight table. like text table to highlight table to an insights table where the negative values or something are highlighted in red. So you can immediately go through and see. So that's like my aha moment that I have with stakeholders is like, how can we be smarter about our analysis that we're doing here? Because like, and then you have to put it in like bottom line. Like, don't you want your users to get your answer faster? Like, yes, you could do comparisons. Like this sheet equals this sheet, you know, but don't you want them to be able to action, get to what they need to faster, so they don't have to come back to you and say, "What am I looking at?" So
Yeah, you mentioned ChatGPT, and I personally I'll use that. Like if I have, this is what I want to do. What kind of calculation do you have in mind? And
right,
most of the time they're not correct, but they at least get me 85% of the time, 85% of the way there. Because I know the way I build things, and I don't know. There's the gears in my head. They're not easily oiled. There's probably like a mouse there pulling levers, and he's probably asleep in my head. But when I'm building calculations, like I have to build them in components before I join
yeah,
them all together. And
yeah,
sometimes I just get lost in that. And I think that's one thing that I really like about ChatGPT is I if I have a really good prompt on a use case, it'll get me, really close to how, it saved me probably about 20-30 minutes each time I'm working on something on an ad hoc basis. Um,
or the famous cannot mix aggregate and
oh yeah,
non-aggregate. Oh
yeah,
my goodness! Like, help me, ChatGPT.
yeah. I was definitely at that session. I think it was this past conference or maybe the conference before that, and it was talking all about that. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So it really got me, to understand why that's happening. And it's not you. It's just you're just trying to do something that's just out of the box. And how can you you know rejig that calc to get it to the way you want to be? Um, I'll ask a few questions left for you. One question I usually ask folks is, I kind of understand where you're at in the community and, the type of content you put together. I know you from work and, what it is, how you expose yourself to the community. And a lot of people really do look up to you. I will say that. And one of the questions I do have is what's next? What's in the horizon for your journey? What are some things that either you have an interest in learning, or are there any projects on the horizon that you're excited to get involved in, start, or talk about?
I'm really excited to learn Databricks. Like it was Python for a little bit, but Databricks and ThoughtSpot. I know. I'm sorry, Tableau, but just I like learning new things.
Right.
So I like seeing how the tools vary because, like, I know Cognos, I know
Mhm.
Click, I know some of the. I'm not a huge Click developer by any means. I just got kind of like an intro just to see how it works.
Mm.
So I would not say I'm a developer. I was interested, curious, and it's all about satisfying that curiosity. So am I curious enough about like another tool to see like how it works? I got the AWS Cloud Practitioner license because I was curious and I wanted to like learn more about it. So, and I also stress to students too is like have more than one tool in your tool belt because it makes you marketable.
Mm.
So you're also displaying a knowledge that you can learn more than one thing. Like, you know what I mean? Because like, what if big companies switch gears? Like, what if they go to another tool instead of using this tool? Like there's always talk of like Power BI versus Tableau versus this other tool and this other tool. And I always get asked which is the best one. And it's all like apples and oranges, man. Apples and oranges. Like they all have good things and they
Yeah.
all have bad things. So what's next for me is just I'll keep trying to learn new things.
Yeah.
I took a management role. So personally, I wanted to kind of develop that for myself is like not just being a leader in the community, but being a leader of a small team and like developing those kinds of skills. But always maintaining the teaching aspect, not letting that atrophy. Maybe do a TED talk at some point in the future, like
Cool.
10 years from now or something, like
Right.
I thought that would be cool.
That's
So,
awesome. Um, I know this is being recorded, so it's probably going to be out there for the masses. Someone's going to run into it and whatnot, and so I'll leave it with this. And I'm kind of interested in your take. An example I have is I think back to myself probably fresh out of bachelor's and working, and I had this mentality, you do good work, you'll get recognized, and
Yeah.
you'll move up. And
Right.
it was really ingrained with my parents. They were really hard workers, but I didn't realize until probably 10 years ago that sometimes if you keep your head down and work, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes people won't notice you, and you have to be your biggest advocate and push yourself to promote that personal brand of yours. So, what are some pieces of advice that you would give to someone that's probably watching right now that's new to Tableau, or they have an interest in creating a some type of blog to share what they're learning? If I were to talk to them, I'd say, hey, just do it. Don't care about what other people are going to think. Just share to the masses, and it's going to help someone. So what are some I guess you could say advice that you would have to someone that's new to Tableau or just new to the community?
Get involved. Like, I would say don't wait for an opportunity, like make an opportunity. So that's kind of why, because I run with things. So I started out my career that way, like waiting for, like the opportunities to present themselves. And they didn't necessarily come around. So that's when I was like, you know what? I'm going to volunteer and I'm going to start teaching an Excel class on the side. And then the network connections and getting people to sign up for that is like, it can make and create opportunities for you. It created opportunities for me. Like, they saw that, oh, okay, she's doing this, so let's tap her on the shoulder for something else. So sometimes you have to make the opportunity happen for yourself. It takes a little bit of time management and motivation. And it's scary. It's so scary to start something new. And don't be afraid to fail. Like, we learn our biggest lessons from failure. Like, if it's just as simple, like, oh, did you reflect on it? Like, you know what I mean? The biggest lessons are from failure. So that's what I would say.
I know. It's kind of in reverse. I'm going to do a shameless plug because I know I'm reaching out a really huge network, that you're a part of. So, since you have roots going all over the place, so I do want to make sure that I do share something so at least folks know who they're talking to.
Yes.
So I will really quick just let me see if I can share.
I will bring the screen in. So yes, Raf's got a nice blog, Raf's World.
Yeah, so shameless. Here's, if you can see this slide, can you see it?
Let me add it to the stage. There we go. Awesome.
So I've added, kind of where you can find me. So for those of you that are new to the community and you're looking to have, someone to meet, to grow your network, or if you're not new to the community and I haven't met you yet, please feel free to drop me a line, as I will to most people, and let's connect. So I do want to, thank Don really quick. I appreciate you allowing me to step into your network and kind of stretch my arms and, reach out to other folks too. So I really do appreciate you, and, thank you so much.
Yeah, anytime. And I have some recommendations for you as well. Like, did you contact this person or this person or this person? And I'll ping them to you. Like, so yeah. And then feel free to reach out to either Raf or myself if you ever have any questions. Tech Tips Girl, obviously, with the cats up at the top. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.